Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how I modified my Haswing Protruar 1.0 trolling motor for use on a kayak. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is remove these 4 screws on the bottom side of the head unit so I can take off that top plate. And once I do that, I'll show you the interior view. This is an overhead view of the top of the head unit for the trolling motor, and I'm just going to pop it off so you can see the wiring. These 2 wires here are going to the battery meter, and then you have your positive and negative going down into the motor, and then out here these 3 wires are going out to the speed controller, and that's what I'm going to be working with for this project. In order to remove the front section of the trolling motor head, what I'm going to do first is remove these 2 screws here, which I've already done. This cap pops off, and then there's a retaining pin in here that I'll have to knock out. Okay, this is what happens when you knock the pin out. What happens is it releases from here. This is spring loaded, and then you just pull this forward and it comes out. And then you just can take out this piece as well that goes right there. Now that I've removed the front section, what I'm going to do with this remaining part is I'm just going to go ahead and cut off these 2 loops here. And then once I put the top lid of the head unit on there, it will be in its finished state. This is a view of inside the head after I've done all the wiring. These are the positive and the negative wires coming from the battery, and of course they had a positive and negative connection that went to the battery meter, so I reconnected all that with marine shrink fit. And then this is the other wire that came out of the motor, and it had a green which went to one side of the buzzer and a red that also went to the buzzer or beeper, and then it had a yellow, a black, and a red. So this red shared with the beeper along with the pot. So they are put together, twisted, soldered, and then used heat shrink tubing on them. The blacks matched up to the black and the yellow matched up to the yellow. So it's pretty self-explanatory as long as you match all the colors and take pictures of stuff before you start cutting everything apart. This is a view after I've cut off the little front sections here, so it's almost flat. And I've already soldered all my wires, and before you solder them, if you're going to use a Gland nut like I did, put it on first and make sure it's right, because with this little notch up in here, it's going to sit in there really nice like this, and then when I put the top section on, it's going to hold it in place, and so it'll keep this part of the wiring from moving. Okay, so the head is reassembled with all the wiring done, and this is my connection for the remote that I'll hook up, and here's my Gland nut. And what I needed to do a little bit was get in there with a file and just open up the curvature a little bit to make sure everything's snapped together nice and tight. And then these areas here that I cut those loops off of, I'll probably go over them with a heat gun or a welding iron just to smooth everything out. But it turned out really well. This is the handle that I removed from the Haswing head unit of the trolling motor. So what I'm going to do now is take it apart and see what the potentiometer looks like in this and if I can use it for my project. To gain access to the interior of this handle, there are 6 screws I need to undo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I've removed this little section here that has the pot inside it. Be careful, when I did it, this spring shot out, so if you want to use this again, make sure you find it. And then there's 2 more screws here that I need to open up, and you can see right here that this is the pot. So let's find out what's going on in there. Okay, so here's the potentiometer, and it looks like it's sealed in there pretty good, but this little piece pops off like this. And so it's your typical 1/4 inch half moon, and I have a knob for that. But what I think I'm going to do is, if I can pop off this little section here, then it'll give me enough space to mount it in a box and then attach the knob if I want to use this. Okay, so I was able to get this piece off the end here, and what that does, it gives me a lot more space to work with, and so I can butt this up to the inside of a box if I want to use it, and use it as the potentiometer. So what I'm going to do is, first, before I go through all that work, make sure that this is still operational and that I didn't break anything. Okay, so I tested this in my setup, and right now I have it set at 0, and everything works. So I'm just going to go ahead and mount this in a box, since this is already sealed and it works, and that'll be my remote. Okay, so I had a box left over from another project, and what I did was attach it to the inside of that. I over-drilled the hole, and I'll fill up the little gaps in here, if you can see, on the other side with some silicone or some marine goop, and then I used 2 screws. And how I did that was I used these existing holes here that are diagonal to each other. That's where some of the other screws were when it was first put together. So I just drilled them out just a little bit bigger and set it in here, and now I've got my remote. All I have to do is wire it up. This is the final assembly of the wired remote. I got everything back together. I put a knob on it. I labeled everything. I have one of the Gland nuts here that runs the 3-conductor 18-gauge wiring that has the special waterproof connector. This is the finished project, and I have the remote connected to it right now, so I'm going to power it up, and the pot is already centered, so you're just going to hear the 3 beeps to go ahead and start, and then I'll show you if it's not centered what you should be listening for. And here it is here. So we're at 0. You go to forward. You can watch the prop down there on the bottom. Back down to 0. Now to reverse. And back to 0. Now what I'm going to demonstrate is when the pot isn't zeroed out for your motor, you're going to get the alarm beep saying that it's not centered, just so you know what it will sound like, and you know you have to dial in your pot better. Those 3 beeps mean I'm centered. That's how you know what's going on. So that's it. If you have any questions, please leave them for me in the comments. Thank you.